Hey everybody, it's Professor Veit. It's Thursday. I'm not sure when you will watch this, but 2 days late per usual. Um, I did not get to filming yesterday, obviously. So I just wanted to start by just checking in. I know things are heavy. Um, yeah, heavy on so many levels. Um, and as maybe many of you did yesterday, just kind of sitting with all the things and thinking through all the things and listening to all the things. Maybe you worked or had clients or patients yesterday, just absorbing a lot of different things. So I was imagining yesterday that I only saw individuals yesterday in in the field. I was imagining yesterday if you were leading a group of individuals that really were divided on the election, right? Let's just say what happened yesterday, right? So I was just thinking about how to conduct a group where we've got some just polar opposite feelings, right? And what that would look like. And when I created this PowerPoint, I changed it from diverse communities and populations. I changed it to identities, because I think that how we identify on multiple levels, many diverse levels, just really spoke to me because obviously how you identify with your value systems, your perhaps biases that you bring to a group process, is really what we are looking at. So I think sometimes when we think of working with diverse communities and populations, we think about immediately perhaps what we can see, and what we can observe either with our eyes or our ears, when in fact, yeah, that's true. There's so much more to a person's identity, right? So a lot of times it's how somebody thinks, feels, family systems, all the things. So I don't know how to deliver that. You all know me by now, where I'm always worried about how did that deliver? How did that land? What did that look like? Um, and so this lecture, piggybacking off of last week, kind of conflict in the group process, it does not mean that conflict will occur, maybe ever, but it does not mean that just because we are leading a group of individuals with diverse identities, backgrounds, family systems, that would necessarily cause conflict. However, if you've ever attended a board meeting, any type of meeting, you've sat through a class, you know, maybe you have seen that conflict can sometimes arise due to, once again, how we identify and what we bring to the table. So I didn't want to say, just because you're working with a diverse group of individuals on multiple levels, conflict will occur. Did not want to say that at all. Conflict can occur, right? Whether we're all alike, we all have the same values, let's say, it can still occur. I'm rambling. Anyway, I'm going to pull up a PowerPoint. And I think I put in the email that this is not my usual PowerPoint uh, uh, presentation. Whoops. Okay. Share. Here we go. Sorry about that. Working with diverse identities. So, having these hard conversations, and hard being a very subjective word, lots of definitions of the word hard and just how we view it. Hard conversations, nearly impossible or controversial, or, just a conversation that's uncomfortable. But within the group setting, where diverse identities, backgrounds, beliefs come into play, us as leaders are called to be really intentional, to come up with strategies to create, as best we can, an open and safe space where dialogue can thrive. So we're going to talk about different approaches. Um, that help with challenging conversations. I could hit end the meeting and start over. I'm not going to do that. So sorry, I was thinking two things at once, but I used to say, welcome to this space or welcome to my office. It's a safe space. And I've been thinking in the past months or maybe a year that that's not true for everybody. I've typically been a person who is privileged to show up in safe spaces. I've typically been a person whose identity has not been questioned or threatened. I'm just speaking for myself. So, yeah. So I kind of have been thinking lately, how intentional I want to be with just words, and kind of changing that to the goal being that we as a group will create a safe space, so that we can have harder conversations, we can butt heads, we can disagree, and then we can continue to work together. So I thought a lot about, just my own family, and the hard conversations we've been having lately, because we have differing views and I love them, right? So I'm not going to stop loving them, but they've been hard conversations to navigate given that we feel so differently. So this kind of overlaps a little bit with past concepts, but establishing those norms for respect, and empathy, and valuing multiple perspectives, active listening, and avoiding interrupting others. I think we see this a lot when we start to disagree. That is when the increase of interruptions of just like, no, 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 what you need to know is, and no, no, let me finish, Well, sometimes when someone finishes a thought that started out to be, whoa, we think really differently, they finish the thought, maybe it is, but maybe they open your mind just a little bit. And practicing empathy by listening to perhaps understand rather than to respond, can increase, the level of trust, maybe increase the level of safety. Acknowledging that each person's experiences and perspectives are valid. Hopefully, maybe helps to lower defensiveness, and foster mutual respect. That's our goal, right? That's a goal. Might not happen at first, but perhaps going over what an empathetic response looks like. Perhaps having a dialogue around wording that can be used if you disagree with somebody. You start off with, I think you're an ignorant, blah, blah, blah. Chances are the conversation can go elsewhere and we don't have a dialogue. So really encouraging individuals to come up with phrases, like, hey, I have a difference of opinions or thoughts. I would love to share that and open a dialogue several different ways. But as the leaders, sometimes we are the ones tossing out different ways to communicate, to be heard, especially when we know we might have a difference of opinion. Again, encouraging cultural humility, asking questions with curiosity rather than judgment, encouraging helping individuals explore their assumptions without fear of reprimand. Cultural humility is about recognizing the limits of our own knowledge about others' experiences, and approaching an individual's identity with openness. When I think about this, I think about so many conversation starters of like, I don't want to share because I'm going to offend somebody, or like, I'm going to sound stupid, or what have you. Well, maybe. Or maybe you can say, I'm curious about what you said about your family system, having conversations around X, Y, and Z, and there being this influence or that influence. Can you tell me more about that? I'm curious. We're putting it out there. A person can say, no, I don't want to share about that. No. Or wow, that was an assumption. But I think oftentimes we fear being reprimanded. So we may keep it to ourselves, and trying to encourage group members to be, you know, a little bit more welcoming of the discomfort, of confronting our biases and assumptions, and recognizing that this discomfort is a part of growth, especially if somebody says, yeah, that you cannot use that term. That is offensive to my race, ethnicity, culture, group I identify with, religion, marital status, and it's like, oh, I never want to open my mouth again. Or I can say, gosh, really sorry that I offended you, or I'm eager to learn more or curious about X, Y, and Z. Utilizing I statements, I have experienced to communicate our perspectives. Really want to not project our assumptions onto others, in an attempt to reduce defensiveness. I have learned that, to keep conversations constructive and specific to personal experiences rather than making broad statements about others, other groups, other identities. In my experience, I have had a conversation around X, Y, or Z, and this was the outcome. Okay, well, in my experience, I have heard that to be, considered racist or fascist, what have you. Okay, this is an experience and this is an experience. And instead of it being, you're so this or you're so that, or how can you think this, we can start a dialogue around individual experiences, and trying to develop some sense of mutual respect to continue the dialogue without maybe fear of repercussion or reprimand. Power dynamics. Okay, we have to acknowledge power dynamics and intersectionality, related to race, gender, socioeconomic status, can play into the role of group interactions. Acknowledging these dynamics upfront can validate those who may feel unheard or marginalized. Intersectionality reminds us that each person's identity is multifaceted, multi-layered, and may affect how they experience both privilege and oppression, depending on the context. Recognizing this can help the group understand the complexities of identity and avoid reducing people to a single story narrative. So I'm curious, if we were on here today, I would ask you, have you ever seen how someone explains power dynamics or acknowledges power dynamics? Like, how is that explained? And taking a step back and sometimes educating, what does intersectionality even mean, right? And I think as a group leaders, if we again look around and someone's like, I don't know what that means, well, it's hard to have a conversation around it. So sometimes being mindful that we need to define certain terms, so that we can have a conversation, a mindful conversation. Focusing on intent versus impact. Huge difference between our intent and the impact. So while a statement might not have been intended to hurt somebody, it can still have a negative impact on others, and then perhaps the group. Encouraging individuals, group members, to be open to this distinction fosters accountability and empathy, allowing individuals to express when they feel impacted by others' comments, and encourage responses like, thank you for sharing that. I needed that feedback, or I apologize if my comment was hurtful, which validates others' experiences, hopefully, maybe not always, without defensiveness. Somebody said the other day in my face-to-face class, they said, what if I'm not sorry? What if I'm not sorry for what I said? And it offended somebody. I looked at them and said, you can appear racist when you do not acknowledge what terminology that you're using is microaggressive. Are you calling me a racist? What I am saying is, in my experience of your dialogue, there have been times that you have used language that is microaggressive and appears to be racist. That was the example that was given. And followed up with, we're not sorry. What does that look like in order to keep moving? That comment was very hurtful. That's not who I aim to be. Thank you for telling me that was not your goal. That was not your intent. But the impact you had on this, this situation or this individual was hurtful. So I apologize if my comment was hurtful. And I'm trying to validate your experience. Try not to get defensive. So validating, that they shared something that on either end that didn't land well, and moving forward. What do we do moving forward, trying to flesh out impact and intent? We had mixed opinions on this. I recently heard another colleague using the tool oops and ouch. Says this participants are allowed this non-verbally indicate, but it would be verbally, if feeling hurt or misunderstood, saying ouch. Maybe I don't know why I feel misunderstood. Maybe I can't explain it. I just know that something isn't sitting well. While allowing the other member to acknowledge and maybe own their statement without defensiveness. Oops. Can we have a dialogue? I don't want to have a dialogue. I just needed to know in this moment, just needed to say in this moment that I feel something. I feel misunderstood, or I feel hurt, or I feel targeted, what have you. Ouch. We can leave it there, depending on the group. How far do we push to have a deeper conversation, especially if we can see that transference is starting to occur in the group when there's still something on the table. We're still in the middle of it, still going through something. That might be as the leader, we say, hey, can we bring this back on the table? Or as a leader, you might say, hey, can the three of us sit down after this group meeting and talk a little bit more about what is going on? Reflective listening and pausing. Reflective listening can often look like summarizing what others have said to confirm understanding before responding. What I think I heard you say was, or what I think you were trying to let us know, did I misunderstand you? Taking pauses between responses, attempting to allow for thoughtful reflection, especially in conversations where emotions could run high. Sometimes a brief pause can give space for people, group members to process what was shared. Let's take a pause. Maybe one of the norms is, hey, sometimes we say, take a pause, take a moment. Heard that? Like, okay, we're going to take a moment to digest that. Or someone says, I'm going to need to pause. I'm going to take a moment. Because if I answer right now, I'm going to come in just, want to let you have it. So let's take a pause. Let's digest what we heard. Perhaps we summarize what we heard so that we can attempt to perhaps land on something that either oh, that's what you meant. Oh, no, you didn't mean that. Or no, here's actually what I meant to say. Doesn't always make it better, especially if the words are out there and they've been hurtful, but trying to come to some sort of, I don't love agreement, but sometimes we do have to move on. And sometimes what we said was hurtful, even when we take pauses. And so that's when sometimes we have to step in as leaders and just say, I don't know that we're getting anywhere. I'm not sure that we're listening anymore. I don't really see many of us pausing before we speak because we are interrupting, on and on and on. Maybe we need to table this. Be open to learning. I think we say this a lot, be open to learning. One thing I was reading about is unlearning, right? So much about what we've assumed or where our biases are is unlearning perhaps what we've been told our entire life, right? Like this is the way we believe because this is how our family, our church, our community, on and on and on. And to unlearn that means going back through and saying, oh, that actually hurt somebody. I'm going to have to unlearn a lot of different ways to communicate, right? So being open to learning, but being willing to, unlearn as well. Oops. Per usual, I feel like I made a little bit of sense, no sense at all. So if you've watched this far and you're like, what was that? Part of me is like, I think that's what it was. I'm not sure that's what it was, but just sort of we could talk, I think, for a while. Of course, I'm talking to myself, but about how to have hard conversations. So this was by no means the end all. This is it. There's many, many, many more points to be made, but this is just a brief way to talk about having hard conversations. So I hope this finds you doing as best as you can. If you tried the sound bath and you liked it, and it helped a little bit, I hope it did. I'm glad it did. And if there's anything I can do to further support you in your well-being, please let me know or your professor of the class. So thank you and have a good day.